Okay, so this is a very quick tour of kind of a list of 10 extensions that I find them all pretty useful. I don't think some of them are particularly well known. I'm just going to have a drink, excuse me. Yeah, I've having changed jobs this year, I've moved around laptops a little bit, and I keep having to reinstall all these. And when Dan was looking for presenters in the summer, I kind of stuck my head over the parapet and said, maybe I'll do something about this set of extensions that I use. So for those, pardon me. For those that don't know me, I'm Phil. I've recently started as a senior dev at Superdrug. I'm also organizer of DDD East Anglia, and I tend to stick my oar in at a lot of the other DDDs and organise geek dinners afterwards, because I like pizza and beer and talking to geeks about code things. Set myself a couple of rules of engagement for this session. Most importantly, all these extensions are absolutely free. Nothing is on a trial or anything. No licenses required. They're also all pretty much stack agnostic. So whether you're doing ASP.NET or Xamarin or microservices or WinForms, my intention is there is going to be something here for you. And finally, none of these are from Microsoft. Kind of. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. So first, I've got a couple that are what I kind of think of as quality of life extensions. These just make the whole use of Visual Studio a little more handy. So the first one is the customize the Visual Studio title bar, which I find it less useful than I used to, because in my previous job I was doing a lot of work with TFS, and I had multiple instances of Visual Studio open at the same time with the same project but different TFS branches. So one of the things I had in here was I had the TFS branch name, so that just when I was alt tabbing between different instances, I could tell which instance was running which branch. Like I said, now that I'm pretty much full time on Git, that's slightly less useful, but it's still handy to see in the title bar what Git branch name, what Git branch I'm running in. And you can bring in there are other macros that you can bring in there. There's a whole laundry list of macros that you can bring in, so you can customize your Visual Studio title to your heart's content to make it work for you. So that's the first one, and the second one that's kind of comes under my heading of quality of life is so at my last job and at Superdrug, and for personal things, I use Azure DevOps a lot. And so I have this thing called the DevOps status monitor, which sits in my system tray. And yeah, it just gives you a warning about when there are issues with Azure DevOps. And if I pop up Visual Studio, you can see it's down there in the corner. It's actually a shame I wasn't on earlier in the evening, because there was actually there was an issue with Azure DevOps, so this had the little amber symbol showing in instead of the nice green tick. But I can just click that, and it drops down, gives me I can get there to the status portal or to the status history if there is an issue with DevOps, if it's something that you need to look at, if you've got builds slow or deployment slow, something like that. So yeah, status monitor. It's just a handy one to have, just to be aware of what's going on with DevOps. So moving on to extensions that are more about actively helping you when you're writing code. Viasphora or however you want to pronounce it, I have no idea. But it does a lot of color coding of your source code, more than you get out of the box with Visual Studio. There's a great big. If I show you the settings for it, you can see you can put all kinds of different colors on your source code. You can put different colors on different keywords or different types of keyword in your source code. It's just quite handy for making things stand out in your code. And it also works with things like if I'm in HTML there, you can see if I just scroll down here slightly, you can see it's got the opening and closing tag for each HTML tag. It shows the opening tag and the closing tag in different colors. So it just makes it really, really easy when you're looking at your HTML to figure out what belongs with what and which thing is which tag is closing which other tag. And the other one that they talk about is rainbow braces, which if I jump into a jQuery plugin here, you can see it's coloring a lot of the braces in separate colors. So again, it's just about making it easier to see, you know, which pair of braces belong together, which closing braces closing which closing braces closing which opening brace rather. So that's the VS4. And then tweaks. So I said the Windows thing from Microsoft, but then I said kind of. Tweaks is one that comes from Mads Christensen. Mads is a program manager at Microsoft on the VS team, and I mean, he's also quite prolific at producing extensions. I've got three of his in here tonight. I could have done the whole session just from some stuff that Mads has produced, but I get a very real sense from a lot of the things that Mads produces is that this is a preview of things that they are thinking of building into Visual Studio. So they can be quite handy for that, as well as just being really useful for adding really useful things into Visual Studio that probably should have been in there out of the box. So things like that, and I clicked the wrong thing. So yeah, things like tweaks, you can set it so that if you do clean solution, it will clean up your obj and bin folders as well as all the other folders, which I find quite a handy thing too, because I find sometimes it doesn't clean up what you want it to. A couple of other things, it does some bits of formatting. One thing that's can be quite handy for speakers is it gives you a presentation mode, which fires up Visual Studio just as a straight out of the box Visual Studio, rather than having ReSharper or any of the other extensions plugged in. So if you're doing presentations or videos, it just it gives you a quick way to get to this is what somebody would see if they were trying to follow what you're doing in your presentation with out of the box Studio. Then moving on, Trailing Space Visualiser is another one from Mads. Like I've said on the slide there, it passes the Ronseal test of doing what it says on the tin, but it's something I got caught out by this. One of my very first PRs that I did at Superdrug. PR was accepted, it went into the build, and the build failed because there was one line of trailing space, and I had to put a separate PR in just to get rid of one space, it felt kind of embarrassing for me and also really, really annoying. So I went and then installed this trailing space visualizer, which if I just come down to here, if I put in a space there, so you can see, there, it's already highlighting that I've got some trailing space on that line. So it's just, I find it handy just for me, making sure that I don't get caught out and embarrassed like that when I'm doing PRs again. Trailing space visualizer. What did we go after that? And the last one that I've put in from Mads, it's called the Web Essentials extension. It's actually a pack of a lot of his other extensions. Although it's called Web Essentials, don't be fooled by the name, because I think it has lots and lots of things in it that are really useful for, I think, nearly anybody, nearly any style of Visual Studio developer. So it does things like, it does file nesting. It's got extra file icons that should have been shipped. It's got a markdown editor. It's got a web compiler for doing TypeScript and JavaScript compilation. It's also got bundler and minifier for doing that kind of minifying things. I've been using it for so long that I tend to think that everybody knows about it and everybody has it installed. But I was working with somebody earlier this year at my last company, and he didn't have it installed. So I tend to think it's worth letting everybody know about, because I think it's so great that everybody should have it. Where's my mouse gone? It's gone to there. So then from our own Matt Lacey, and I know Matt's on the call, I won't embarrass him too much. Const Visualiser. This is just for one of those times when you are kind of 3 layers deep in your code, and you've referred to a constant in your code, but you can't remember what the exact value is. It just pops up where you've got constants. It just pops up above where you've used the constant. It pops up what the value is. So it gives you instant referral to it at any time when you're coding. So, like I say, when you can't just remember the value, it's really handy to have. And also Matt gets bonus points for spelling visualizer correctly, as opposed to Mads, who didn't. There's no Z in visualizer. And then a second one from Matt is one about to-dos, which basically, if I dip into Studio again and just pop in a to-do, fix this. If I now pop down to my error list, you see it's popped it straight in there in the to-do as a warning. So very much along the lines of what Dan was talking about, the fact that Rider will warn you about to-dos before you do a git commit. It's very much along those lines of just giving you a reminder that you've got to-dos in your code that you need to get on and solve. Warn about to-dos. From there, Snippet Designer. Now, admittedly, your use of this, the utility that you get from this is going to depend on how much you use snippets or not. But it gives you a really nice UI for if you're putting together your own snippets. You get quite a nice UI. So I'm going to just pop that in there, and I can start writing some code in here. I can put in the shortcut that I want my snippet to be. So I could just pop that in there and say, Oxford. What it also gives you is if you want hotspots in your snippets, say I want I am going to say I want a type value. That just gives me a that will give me a hotspot when I when I use the snippet. Just so it gives you a you can easily focus in on the thing that you're replacing. I just find it makes producing snippets easier. It works for me. Like I say, depending on how much you use snippets, you may or may not find it useful. And the last one that I had is there is an extension called Stacktrace Explorer, and the guy that produced it freely admits that it's inspired by a Stacktrace Explorer in ReSharper. But if you haven't got ReSharper, this is really handy. So I haven't got a demo for this, but you can, if you get a text stack trace, like you get in Elmer or from App Insights, you can paste it into the Stacktrace Explorer, and it'll give you hyperlinks into your code. So you can easily click straight to a line that's throwing an exception or a method that's throwing an exception, and it just makes it much easier to navigate around the stack trace and try and get to the bottom of what's causing your exception. So in a very quick tour, that is 10 Visual Studio extensions that you might have missed. So thanks for having me. If you go to tinyurl.com/10vs extensions, I've got a blog post where I've got all these listed out, and they're all hyperlinked to the Visual Studio Marketplace. So you can download them and get them installed on your machine if they're going to work for you.